Good afternoon, I'm Karen Holmes Ward. We're just days away from Super Tuesday, when Bay Staters, along with voters in 15 other states in American Samoa, will cast their ballots for the candidates of their choice. Now, while divisiveness and voter apathy may keep some from the polls, there are many impactful policy issues under debate, from coffee shops to town halls, that the elections may ultimately decide. Joining us now is Tanisha Sullivan. She's the president of the Boston branch NAACP and recently named New England Area Conference president. Welcome, Tanisha.
Thank you.
So, are people of color pivotal in this next election cycle? What are the issues that people of color should be focused on that should drive them to the polls?
Absolutely, Karen. This election cycle, we have many issues of importance and impact to communities of color. Whether we're talking about one of the top issues across the nation, housing and access to affordable housing, and access to home ownership opportunities as well. Public education. We're seeing in communities across the country at the local level attempts to really influence what is taught or not in our classrooms. We also, of course, are in the middle of a climate crisis. And what is often not spoken of is the impact of environmental toxins and hazards on communities of color. And so many of the issues, education, economic opportunity, housing, climate, immigration,
reproductive justice
will be on the ballot. And when we talk about reproductive justice and women's health, many of us have our eyes on Alabama. With their most recent their court's most recent decision relative to IVF. And so all of these issues are on the ballot this cycle. I know we say that time and time again, but this year it could not be more true.
Now, you're co-leading a new coalition. It's Ranked Choice Boston, that's looking to bring ranked choice voting to local Boston elections. What is ranked choice, and how would this impact elections?
You know, the best way to describe this is ranked choice voting is what we do on a nearly daily basis when we're deciding, I don't know, what kind of pizza we'd like to eat, right? Cheese, pepperoni, veggie, or deciding where we want to go on vacation. Well, if I can't go to, let's say, Disney, then I want Disney World, then I want to go to Disneyland. And so ranked choice voting really does give voters the opportunity to rank their voting choices. It gives them an opportunity to say, you know what, I like 3 of the candidates and I like them in this order, and gives them an opportunity to actually cast a ballot in that way. Why does this matter? So very often in elections, what we find is that the person who ends up winning the seat may only win with about 20% of the vote. That's not a majority. And so in an already divisive political environment, what ranked choice voting allows us to do is to help ensure that the person who actually ends up in the seat is the person who has the majority of the support of voters. So if your first choice doesn't make the cut, then we move to your second choice. Again, building momentum, building support for the individual who ultimately ends up in the seat. And so in Boston, we are working to advance a ranked choice voting policy. This is a policy that's been in place in Cambridge for decades now. But we are working to move ranked choice voting through the political process in Boston, going first to our city council, then to the mayor, and ultimately to the legislature.
How would this impact the constituency that the NAACP serves?
Well, ranked choice voting by the data tells us that it increases certainly representation among women, among people of color, among people who are lower income, come from lower income backgrounds. It really does seek to ensure that people who perhaps would not ordinarily have the opportunity to serve actually get a fair shot. It encourages more people to vote. Oftentimes people feel as if they can't it encourages people to run because oftentimes, people may feel like, who am I to run for an office? Nobody's going to vote for me. But in the ranked choice voting system, it encourages more people to run because it gives more people the opportunity to actually get and build And build votes,
build
yeah.
some followers. Let me switch gears here. The Supreme Court is examining the First Amendment rights of social media companies, and if states have the right to limit what can and cannot be posted on their platforms. How should First Amendment rights to free speech be balanced with the rise in hate speech and disinformation that we see on social media?
Yeah, these are the times we're living in. First and foremost, we have to ensure that we are protecting our Constitution and the right to free speech. That is fundamental in truly the fight for all of our rights. It is fundamental to civil rights advocacy. And so we must continue to fight to preserve and protect the First Amendment. At the same time, we also have to be vigilant in protecting against speech that leads to violence action. And what we're seeing on social media today in an unregulated environment is speech that either is or could lead to violence. We're seeing social media being used to target young people. We're seeing, which ultimately, in some instances, is leading to violence against young people. We're seeing social media being used to organize hate groups in a very targeted way. And so this is an issue that we as the NAACP are actively monitoring because, again, we believe in the importance of the First Amendment, but at the same time, we understand how speech can very quickly turn to violent action against people.
Let me bring you back to a specific incident on the topic of hate speech. Social media was used by some teens in Western Massachusetts to conduct a slave auction of their black classmates. And those involved, we should say, they attended Southwick Regional School, where 90% of the student body is white. So what were your initial thoughts when you heard about this incident?
Well, fortunately, we have the Springfield area branch of the NAACP under the leadership of Bishop Talbert Swan, working actively with the Southwick School District in that community to address this issue. This is yet another example of how far we have come, but how quickly we are regressing. Young people who believe it to be appropriate to engage in a slave auction is something of deep concern to us. I think it reflects the need for more diversity in our curriculum, a fight that, of course, we are in many communities. This is indicative of young people not knowing and understanding our history. Because when you know and understand the history of slavery in this country, then
you would know
that is not
absolutely wrong,
and what it can do to a culture and how it harms people.
You're leading the NAACP New England Area Conference now. As you take a look at this larger geographic area, are there some places where you're particularly focused, and what are some of the issues you see facing the larger region?
Well, what's clear to us when we look across the state area conference, which includes Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, is that there are some consistencies in the issues. Again, housing being a #1 issue. But we also know that all too often up here in the Northeast and in northern New England, folks may think that we're immune from some of the racial justice issues impacting other parts of the country. We know that when it comes to voting and voting rights, the fight to access the ballot is consistent across the country. And so working with our units in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Rhode Island, voting rights will continue to be a top issue for the NAACP and specifically for the state conference. Across the country, what we're seeing when it comes to voting rights are the state conferences of the NAACP actively involved in litigation, working to protect the Voting Rights Act. We see that in Alabama, North Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, wherever there's a fight to protect access to the ballot box, and specifically around redistricting, the state area conferences are actively involved. And so I do expect that we will do that here in northern New England to, again, ensure that we're protecting access to the ballot box.
Lots of work to be done.
A lot.
All right, Tanisha Sullivan, Boston Branch and New England Region President of the NAACP. Thank you for joining us.